I tried that. It's gonna give you a link.
All right. And then, as told before, this meeting is going to be like a little bit of combination between the Thinking Big and the grooming session for this week. And then next week, we're probably going to start out with, separating those two, if we have enough subject material, which I think we do. But I think, yeah, go ahead.
With unrelated topic, can you pause the recording for a moment so that it doesn't add to this unnecessarily?
All right, we're back again. Yeah, so I was thinking with the weekly grooming, like let's make sure that we are, on point for 12.5, 12.6. With 12.5, we should be more than fine. 12.6 is the most important one there. And perhaps also look a little bit ahead, going into Thinking Big, but I would still say that is part of, weekly grooming as to, hey, what are your plans for 12.7? Because now is the time for us to move into that. And let me see, is there more? Yeah, basically my only point here is like, hey, let's use the validation tracking board. Let's use the build tracking board. See if we can make it useful and get it into our system to use those two.
Cool.
So perhaps my suggestion would be for Tao to share your screen. And then let us see what you see as to how you're planning the milestones.
Are we doing item 2B right now? Or?
Yes, I would say so, because 12.5 is passed to some extent.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just to give some extent on the items 2A, those were, I think they're actually in the validation board. So I've seen them, they're still open. And I was just curious, like, are we doing anything with them? Are we moving them somewhere?
Sorry, I thought A was my point as well. I didn't see your name next to it, Nadia.
No worries. Yeah, maybe if you don't mind, we can just quickly open them. If someone wants to share the screen, maybe Tao, if you want to share the screen and like open them. I'm just curious, like, what do we think about them? Because I see that the first one is assigned to 12.5. So we, as minimum, we need to change the milestone because it's still open as it's 12.5. Mm-hmm. And the second one as well. So, or we need to move them, or we need to, I feel like we need to do something with them.
Yeah, so the synthesis I'm intending to complete this week. We discussed one of the two. Oh no, that's the understanding user needs for pipeline, public pipeline page. I see Lori is joining as well. Hey, Lori.
Hey guys.
We were just discussing some UX research issues. So the understanding, let me continue. The understanding user needs for public pipeline page. I believe we have set up a meeting between me and Thao and Lori to do the synthesis on that, because we discussed that, I believe, 2 weeks ago to try out how that goes for a joint synthesis on a research project. And the public pipeline page issue itself has been, I believe, scheduled for 12.7. So we're basically gearing up to make that information available for the ideation of that particular issue. I believe that was scheduled tomorrow, but I should check. And the other issue is very small, so I'm intending to close that this week actually.
Okay, so that makes sense. And this small one, the underlying issues related to this are also closed themselves. So I'm glad you'll be closing this small one.
And then another one should be assigned to 12.7 then, or is that the understanding? This one.
Well, so I have a question about that. Why are we assigning milestones to non-implementation issues? That I thought that anything in the validation track would not have an associated milestone.
That's a good question. I assigned those milestones myself, basically for myself, to give a little bit more visibility onto like, hey, in which time frame this should be completed, and ideally speaking, but that is up for discussion to some extent. It's like the more standardized our preparation work in terms of the validation track becomes, the more it, falls in line with the cadence, I think the better. But, some of that work might only take 2 weeks, while others take, the full milestone. So it is up to discussion how effective that will be. I'm fine with either way. I'm just, for myself, I need to make sure that it is visible, and I know when to work on what. Basically, that's my only goal.
Yeah, that same thing for me, Tal. For research, we put milestones on stuff because we also track it on all kinds of other places, as well as the UX big board that we have that we review each milestone. So it helps me to know what I need to work on as well. So it's not really tied to development necessarily, but it's more like Dimitri said, for our workflow, our workload. There's no other way that I know of that we can figure that out. If there is, tell me.
I might have an idea for that, because that is kind of why I created the validation board, which is not per se tied to a milestone, but rather that we can see the
work in flight.
Yeah, like the amount of work per label. Like, hey, how many items are currently within the problem validation? Because we can only do so much, right? And how many are in the solution validation? How many are in ideation? And like based on that, like if we have, for example, 3 issues within problem validation, I'm just saying random numbers here, 3 items within the ideation, 3 items within solution validation. And if one moves towards implementation, like, hey, this is ready for scheduling, ready for implementation, then that means a spot opens up in, for example, the ideation column. That means like, hey, we actually have room for some additional work. And in that way, track a little bit our workload. That was my thoughts initially with the validation tracking board.
Yeah, and I recall when you presented the validation tracking board to me, and it was in this recurring meeting, and I think Nadia, you were in that session. It was maybe 2 weeks ago. You were saying that it doesn't that we weren't going to necessarily use milestones in order to track the work. We would use this validation tracking board. I'm perfectly fine if you want to, based on what Lori and you were saying, Dimitri, to have a milestone on there so that you know in which time frame you'll be working on this particular validation issue. I'm fine with that, but I wanted to make sure I didn't misunderstand a discussion we had before, to not have those milestones on there.
And it may be more of an issue for me because I'm not just working with this team, I'm working with all of the teams. So I need to know a little bit more.
You use the milestone to filter on to kind of have buckets of work in different iterations.
We have a mural board that the UX research team is tracking all of our efforts on, and it's split up by milestones. So we have to know which milestone we're supposed to be working on something in, because we're not just attached to one subgroup.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I know.
I'm fine with both in a way, as the milestone could also indicate like the absolute deadline we want something to be ready, done for. And while the throughput of the validation tracking board for our own team can in that case communicate, is there a spot available for new work, or are we still, full on committed to the current issues in progress? I think it can work at the same time.
Well, not necessarily. If you use it in the sense of the final deadline, and let's say the underlying implementation issue, I actually am going to push to 12.8. Your absolute deadline would be 12.7, but that would indicate that a deadline, whereas Lori is working off of it. If she had one that said 12.7, she won't work on it during 12.6. She'll work on it in 12.6.
Not necessarily though.
Right.
So it's, for me, it is also the deadline. So 12.7 would be the deadline that it needs to be finished by, but I might start working on it in 12.6 if I have time.
Okay,
so yeah.
So I misunderstood what you said earlier.
Sorry.
That milestone tells you the time frame in which you'd be working on that item. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. By the way, something you said earlier, Dimitri, that the underlying build issue for this one is target for 12.7. I'm actually going to push some things out of 12.7. because I'm getting news from the engineering manager. There'll be less capacity because of the holidays, since that milestone spans the end part of November, middle of November to December, and some folks will be out. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It spans part of December into January, and people will be out during a big part of December, which reduces capacity.
That sounds good. If I see within the related issues section on this page, I do actually see it's been moved to backlog instead of 12.7.
Yeah.
It's a little bit above.
Oh yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Related issues. Yeah. Yeah. So we can talk about that later, but it doesn't, I don't, that's true. It has an impact on when you would actually tackle this. I can't remember why. Let me open that. And some of this is due to discussions that I had with Crystal, the engineering manager for CI. Let me see. Was I the one who moved it back?
Side question, by the way, on engineering managers. So Crystal is the engineering manager for CI, but is that just from a backend perspective, or is it from everything, but the backend and front end? Because we also have a front end engineering manager, right?
You're right. Daniel C. I can't remember his full last name. He is the front end EM, and then Crystal is the back end EM.
Okay.
And
Daniel I thought something has changed.
Right. Daniel and Crystal and I are scheduled to meet every Friday to talk through both things that are in the current iteration and also changes we have to make for targets for next release. I'm not sure when it happened that this got moved back to the backlog. Jason changed it 2 months ago. Huh.
Interesting. I believe he might have created another issue to track the effort, because this now falls into the product development workflow, and he had a slightly different idea as to how to execute on that. So perhaps in the related sections of this issue, there might be another issue that actually is still scheduled or not. Maybe I'm making things up here, but I thought I saw something like that. I would need to dive into it. I can mention you in the issue if need be.
Okay. The only other issue I see linked to this implementation issue is that cross project. Let's see. What does the green circle mean? That icon, as opposed
it's
to
open. So you have open and closed.
Okay. Well, what's closed? I'm not sure. I probably need to do a little more research. But the point here is it has whether or not the underlying implementation issue is scheduled for an upcoming milestone has an impact on whether or not you proceed with UX, both research and design. Is that correct, Dimitri or Lori?
I did not fully understand your question. Sorry.
Oh, you would only want to work on this validation issue if the related implementation issue is scheduled for an upcoming milestone.
Not necessarily.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dimitri. Not necessarily, Tal, because it just depends on so many factors. Like if we have bandwidth and we can take it on, we could research it and have it ready in the queue for when the implementation story gets put into development's queue. So it doesn't have to be a symbiotic, kind of very close relationship. Often it is, but sometimes it's better if it's not, because depending on what we find out, we might need a little bit more time to rethink what our proposal was or whatever it is. So we need a little bit of time between that and the dev implementation sometimes.
Okay. But it would be trumped by if there is a need for the next release any UX research or design tied to an issue in the next release would take priority over something that doesn't have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only comment was on the build issue on terms of how it was prioritized in the past by Jason. As it was initially scheduled, then there wasn't enough requests as far as Jason was concerned. So I don't know like how he got his information, but he said like, hey, I don't have enough requests actually to really actually prioritize this issue. Then he reprioritized it again because there was a clear ask from a customer, a big customer. I'm in the public space here, so I cannot speak my mind.
No worries. No worries.
And then he rescheduled it. So I don't know why it's now again been moved back to backlog. But that's a little history on the build issue being either prioritized or not.
All right. I'll have to follow up on that with him to get the detail. And then I'll add it maybe to this issue for now. Move this forward for that.
Yeah, I might have a little bit additional context on that actually. So the customer that did request this feature, I had a interview with them last week, and the results from that I still need to do the note taking, but I can tell you in short that they intend a different kind of dashboard. They intend a infrastructure runner board instead of something that actually monitors pipelines. They're more interested in monitoring resources such as runners and scaling that up and down, etc., those kind of things, rather than the actual pipelines for the repositories within that GitLab instance. So there's a difference in expectation there.
Okay, so that and then he also made a comment here based on capacity. He was moving it back to the backlog due to high priority items with demonstrated that we need. So, okay, so both those things, your research finding that the scope of what the customer want is not going to be delivered by this particular issue, and Jason made a decision based on capacity that it needed to be moved back to the backlog. In which case, knowing all those things, would you even want to pursue this, the related, this issue here to understand user needs for, or?
So I think we're in a good spot with the research on that because it's a problem validation, and that can or cannot make the case to actually prioritize something like this. Because that was kind of the question, like, hey, what is the actual, the real problem space we're looking into? We were not sure when this issue was open. That's why we started the validation effort, which was for a big part done by Lori and then for a smaller part done by me. The results from that are still to be synthesized. So I cannot say for sure yes or no on that question.
Let's go ahead at least complete the problem validation and synthesize the research finding. And then we may park it for a while until we return to move on to solution validation if we get to the point where we want to pull this in for build later.
Yeah, what do you think, Laurie? Sounds good, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because it sounds like we've already done all of the interviews for this. We just need to synthesize the findings. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that so that it's because if that gets delayed, it just moves you away from recalling those sessions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yay, sounds good. All right, so now that helps me understand. That helps me understand what Nadia wanted us to do, which is the state of where we're at with this. Should this be moved to? Okay, so so what we decided here is we're going to decision today is to complete the synthesis.
Yeah, I think both can be I see. I will close this today / tomorrow. I'm going to make of that.
Okay.
But for the other one, yeah, 12.7 would be the right one, because we might need a follow-up census discussion similar to the other one.
Okay. Okay. This capture what we agree we'll do with this for now. This is complete the synthesis. During is in 12.6 to complete the synthesis of findings from interview. Okay, I think we're good with item 2A. So going on to item 2B, interrupt me if I'm wrong on, we're done with 2A. Going to 2B, go over all the items scheduled for 12.6 to check assign workflow labels and priority. And you're talking about 12.6 validation or 12.6 build track?
These are for the build track, 12.6 issues.
Do you want me to use this new triage label that you created?
Wait, let me see if I'm correct, because I might be misinterpreting. So this CI triage label is the label we've discussed last week on like a tool for us to better scope down on issues which have been reviewed or are prioritized by the triad, by both engineering, both UX, both PM. We have, those are good candidates to be included into either a next validation track or a next build track. Other stage groups are using such a method as well. Package is doing so, Geo is doing so. The exact definition of the CI triage label might differ between those stage groups a little. Nadia, do you have more knowledge on how they are exactly using the triage label?
I don't think so. You're talking about the Geo particularly or some other groups?
Yeah, so we were talking with Ian on the package triage.
I didn't have time to deep dive into that one. Maybe we have to follow up on that.
Yeah, I think it basically tries to, like how I see it, is it tries to solve the problem of having a bucket to throw items into to make them ready for discussion towards moving them towards either the validation track or the build track, and having that be cross-functional. Yeah. Because right now it feels a little bit, to me at least, as if we were grabbing like some items out of a way too big a bucket basically of issues, because we have like 4,000 of them within just CI, I believe. So this makes the scope a little bit smaller, and it makes it a little bit more that we're all more informed on moving items from that bucket into either the validation track or the build track. Does that make sense? I'm trying to see if I can communicate the need.
So yeah, I'm seeing how they define, like Geo triage is using it to define things that to tag things that really they're trying to figure out what to do with. And plan team is use the same definition. I totally agree that this is the triage package. Oh, they changed their ordering of their label a little bit. A metadata issue listing issues which require triage. Yeah, I'm happy for us to do the same, because you're right. There's just a huge backlog out there that I don't even know where to begin. So things of interest that come up, we can throw this label on it in order to. Do you think that would be a separate session, an ad hoc one, Dimitri, that we would have including engineering, or ad hoc or recurring work session to regularly visit the items that are tagged with this label?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit, so it can be either. How I see it is that, the items that will be included or, will be labeled with that label the scope of those label or those issues might differ. Like some issues might be really big and, you know, more like a North Star idea, while others are, you know, quick fixes and you know, low-hanging fruit. I do think a repeating meeting or like included as an action item in one of our already existing repeating meetings might create a solution there, because I think that grooming meeting you were talking about earlier this meeting with engineering, you know, there should be such a meeting between engineering, UX, and PM, where I think such an action point is, you know, perfect.
Okay. I think I had the action item from the last meeting to schedule that, and I haven't done that. I scheduled a session to go over. No, that wasn't it. Well, the idea was a think big session, but we can think big can be one of the agenda topics for that. Another one would be another agenda top maybe to look through things that have the CI triage label. Let me think about that, because I don't want to proliferate a lot of meetings for unique purposes and have them fill our calendars. Maybe a recurring one that is PM, UX, front end, back end for CI team as a whole.
Yeah, I agree on that. Perhaps the one on Tuesday might be an interesting one for that one. Though I would say for example, the meeting we have on Tuesdays really focuses in on the build track for the current milestone.
Yes,
most often, while
yes.
this is like this can be ahead of the build track or even ahead of the validation track, right?
Yes, agreed. I don't want to combine it with the Tuesday existing CIT meeting, because that is checkpoint for what is currently in build and specific for the current milestone.
Yeah.
So we'll have to have a separate one for this. I'll sync with Crystal tomorrow at my weekly scheduling meeting with her to find out what her suggestion is. But more than likely, it'll be early morning, a recurring meeting. I think I can't decide if I want it every week or every other week.
I think we should start from every week for now, and then we can switch for having it rarely, because I feel like so much things are to be discussed right now. And from example of the package team, so they have 3 rituals: the weekly sync, engineering UX, where they go through the what's the status of the things today, what are the blocking parts, like what are the roadblocks, what are we working on, etc. Then there is another one, the Think Big session. They're actually having them every other week. But I think they started from having it every week as well to get up to speed, because right now they're talking about the future, the 12.7, 12.8 even on those Think Big sessions. And I think for now, if we will start that, we probably will be talking from about 12.6 on them. So really short term. And the next ritual that they have is a retro. So like 3 rituals are the main for them, where like involving all of the team. This is what I'm seeing from them.
But
so I think your suggestion is to include it into the Thinking Big run, right? Sorry to interrupt you, Tal.
No, go ahead. Say your question again, Dimitri. I can.
So I was saying I think that Nadia is suggesting, similar to package team, that this could be a recurring action item within the Thinking Big sessions. Correct?
Yes, like going over, like I would say, like what package did in the beginning. They used to think big for talking right now, for example, about the next milestone, and they would, by discussing that often, they would move it a little bit further. So we would be giving ourselves a little bit of preparation time. Like we will be already knowing what's going into the next milestone, so we could postpone the discussions to the next milestone. You know, not postpone, but like with the time we could grow over this time period between actual development and planning or visionary discussions. That would give us some time to schedule research and UX work.
And you mentioned that package does also a 3rd meeting for retrospective. They do retro on a weekly basis. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that yet.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that we should do that. I agree with that. We had a lot of discussions on the retro also during the last meeting. That was just an example.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in actual, like, I think they're collecting inputs in a sync way and then discussing them in a sync way. I think we've been talking about that as well, but I leave that one up for now in the air. think we're discussing about the Think Big right now. I don't want to drag the focus out.
Is it correct that the package team is also a little bit smaller in terms of engineering and UX and PM involved, like as a total?
You want me to check real quick? I don't think so, to be honest. Like, I don't think that there is too big of a difference. Let me quickly double check that.
Doesn't really matter too much, but I was thinking like it might make it easier to schedule such meetings in, you know, if the group is a little smaller versus the group is a little bigger.
Yeah. I don't think that there is a big size in the difference. Like, judging by the attendance of the meetings on the Think Big sessions is like 3 rows of faces by 3 to 4 people in the Think Big discussion, including UXers, front-enders, engineers, and PM. So it's like approximately 8 to 10 people in every Think Big, for example.
Gotcha. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Before I throw something on the calendar, let me just validate with, verify with Crystal tomorrow, or I might do that on Slack today.
Was that a pun, by the way? Verify with Crystal.
Yes. No. By the way, Dimitri, so the original sentence you have here for 2B, is this an action you want us to take as slightly unrelated to our discussion here about the new triage label?
I do not know why I structured it that way. They should be like in hierarchy a level up the CI triage label. So pardon me for that.
Okay. All right. Do we still want to do this activity though? Go through what's scheduled 12.6 to check the assigned workflow labels?
I think that is a worthwhile thing to do.
Okay.
So to get us on that track of using the workflow labels for everything, I've not touched them because, you know, they are to be scheduled by you, but I think it's interesting to walk the board for 12.6 at least, and then, you know, see where we stand for 12.7 for those items, you know, especially the validation track workflow labels are going to be applicable.
Okay, let's, you also list that activity in item D below. So you're going to make sure.
Did I duplicate some things?
You're going to make sure we cover this. So let me I just modified B for what we just discussed, and then we'll cover walking the board in D. You probably looked at this at different times and duplicated, no worries. Before we go from B to D, on C, Nadia, I just want to go sequentially so we don't miss anything. What was the item you wanted us to?
I just added that. Sorry, that's just right now during the meeting. So let me actually just move that up. Just ignore that one. This is FYI for.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like for you to see how they do it, and if you look through that document, it gets clear what are they doing during those sessions, and there are actually recordings of the video. So it's more FYI if you would like to make yourself familiar how the Think Big are going for package.
Okay. By the way, I'm just making this red so I remember to go back and check this off. Okay, so before we go to 2C and walk the board, I'm looking at the time and we have 20 minutes. Is it more important for us to look at the OKRs for Q4? If not, we'll wait to do that.
I think we can do for 12.6. I can mention you and walk the board myself asynchronously, ask you like, hey, what do you think of this workflow label on this issue? Okay. For 12.7, it is actually quite important to have discussed the OKRs. So that we, you know, might able to see like, hey, are our priorities aligned with the actual issues scheduled for those milestones?
Yeah.
I agree on your proposal.
Okay. Let me do this so that I know what we.
Yeah, I think for, especially 12.7, I think that's where the real value will be in terms of assigning those labels. And I feel that is yet to be like really defined, and the OKRs, should give us a little bit of insight onto that.
All right, so let's open that and then look into opportunities. I don't know what this link is going to take us. Oh, okay.
It's a link into one of the OKRs actually. So the original OKR link, which is the tab right, it links towards the UX OKRs for Q4. I have less knowledge about the product management OKRs, but I would be interested in those as well. And just basically would like to work together with you to see like how can we get those in there as well. Like how can we incorporate the OKRs into the items for 12.7 and 12.8, if I'm correct. Am I correct on that, Nadia, or is 12.8 already Q1 of 2020?
Yeah, I think that's still Q4. It's gonna go in January, go out 12.8. Right, so that's still Q4. Yeah. I think for the UX OKRs, the most important things are the UX scorecard. So like the first one talks about the first 3 points in number 1. If you scroll all the way up, Tao. So
by the way, this link takes me to a comment. Just so you know, this one right here, this one takes to a specific comment. But okay, so scroll to number 4.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be the normal issue. Sorry for that.
Wait, I'm a little confused. There's 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, just up in the description.
I don't see more of the description. I'm confused.
That's it. So I don't know. So from my understanding, there are 2 things, 2 OKRs for the UX, and so the first 3 checkpoints in number 1. Those are the UX showcase sessions that basically do not have to do anything with Tao. This is the UX work. We're going to showcase our work that we are doing. The number 4 is the UX scorecards, the one that we discussed yesterday. And there is one that connects to the GitLab CI.
It's a little bit up.
Yeah.
If you stay in the top, then you see complete UX scorecards as the 4th item under the 1st item. We should probably give them
gotcha.
Exactly.
When you say 4, you're talking about the checkbox number 4. Okay, I'm confused.
So we discussed this yesterday. So the importance of there is just to continue the work with the UX scorecard. So I guess what Dimitri, you're pointing to is that we have to make sure that for 12.7 we schedule some work for that, and that means that basically right now we we have to start work and plan work on the research if we would be doing anything additionally there. So basically from the whole number 1, it's just the UX scorecard work for 12.7 on setting up GitLab CI that we started nice discussion yesterday that I very much liked. For the second point, there is also not much information for the Tao here. It's more for us, Dimitri. It's like beautifying our UI. So it's about the pajamas and bringing down the number of the UX depth tickets. So I would say there is, I don't know if you want to point something out specifically to Tao here. Apart.
Yeah, so just for the first item, the UX research we discussed yesterday in the synthesis meeting or the insight discussion meeting, we should continue that and get some of that effort scheduled for 12.7. That's my number 1 request. And then for the second one, the component issues you see that are listed there, that has not so much to do with continuous integration. However, there are additional items for us to consider for this second OKR. This OKR is less mandatory, but it is beautiful if we can score some points there and up the score in terms of continuous integration. And I think there's a clear action point for me there to include some of those items with the CI triage label, so we can discuss them next time and see like, hey, do you align with me and potentially engineering as well as that these items are feasible and actually also important to be scheduled for 12.7 and 12.8.
Great, good points. Yeah. Sorry, I missed.
Okay.
Is my story clear, or do you have questions? Because I would love to answer any questions you have.
I am not sure of my involvement.
I guess what we will just need to do, Dimitri, to not confuse Tao right now, is just whenever we have a clear potential improvements for pajamas to include, we should just bring this to these triage meetings that we should have. Will it be think big sessions or whatever we'll schedule? So we just give Tao a clear example. Hey, we have this list of things and few of them, and like this number of them, we want to be included into the next milestone. That's it.
So perhaps I'm less not fully aligned on the second OKR, Nadia. The component efforts, those are not like part of your stage group effort per se, right? They are already kind of taken care of. Like skeleton loaders is very small, buttons is almost completed already, models the same thing. Like those issues are like I would say 90% done.
Yes,
the sorting one is a different one. I would need to look into that. But it seems that issue linked is also closed, but I'll look into that.
Yeah.
But where I was referring to was issues that actually have an impact on the product directly, that have UI polish issues and UX depth issues that fall into the continuous integration area, that actually will count towards the OKR as well. And those are the issues I was intending to put the CI triage label on in order to discuss them next time with Tao.
That's great. I think what will help Tao is when we will have them, like when we will have the list, because right now we are talking about something that's not visible and it's really hard to understand what are we talking about. I guess this is where the confusion is.
It sounds good, Dimitri, if you put the triage label on it so that we know when to talk through those.
Yes, sounds good. In terms of OKR1, my last comment towards that is, I think we are already aligned. Getting some of those issues in there is going to be really important to get those OKRs to a sufficient grade. All the help we can get there is great, and I think it will have a really great impact on the product as well. So I think it's going to be a win-win situation regardless.
Sounds good. I'm sorry that I interrupted you. Yes, sounds good. Nadia, did I interrupt your thought?
No, I think Dimitri said it all correct. Yeah, I feel like because indeed, Dimitri, this link, just for your information, the items on the second point here, those are the items that been transferred from Q3, the one that we didn't finish, but I think we are so close to finish. This is why they're for sure are there, because I think we will finish. But also there are, as you see, the last item in the second point, identify other issues in the backlog to contribute to, so we can add more there. And indeed, like what I expect us to do is that, Dimitri, you are the best person to know here what we can contribute to. And I think you just have to help us to find the list of those, and we can put a triage label on that, like you suggested, and we just go and discuss them and see what can we include for Q4.
Yeah, I'll do. I'll need to do some backlog grouping on that, see which issues are actually still recent or applicable, and then we can discuss them later. So the first action point on that is in my court. If you say that like that, in Dutch you say it like that. But we'll discuss next time on that. So no further action points on that.
Okay. What is this one? Q3 OKR remaining tasks prioritization for Q4.
Yeah, so I think we already have discussed that at the same time. This wasn't really clear when I wrote these agenda points last time. So some of the OKR responsibilities from Q3 have transferred to Q4. That is including the UX scorecard, that is including the component efforts. Okay. Those are already kind of taken care of. So the main thing is getting some of those issues from UX scorecard, that we have validated, that we're sure on will have a good impact on the product, that we get those scheduled for 12.7 and 12.8. If we do that, we're in a very good spot.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and if you'd like to inform us as to how we can be of the most help to you to get your product management OKRs completed, all the best on transparency on that as well.
Yeah, I need to, I have some questions on my Q4 OKRs for my next one-on-one with Jason. And then yes, I'll circle back to let you all know what UX can do to help me achieve those. This will be the first quarter that I'm going to be involved in trying to meet some of the OKRs, and some of them are confusing to me, so I need to kind of wrap my mind around it to figure out where I need help. Thank you, Dimitri.
Cheers.
This one, 3C, Nadia discussed with Tao and Dimitri how we'd like to be pairing up for research.
This is the question that I'm trying to discuss with every PM in the CI/CD section. So with the recent switch of the process that we don't have so much time with Lori anymore because there is a lot of work for her to do for 5 stage groups. I'm kind of like getting myself familiar with what kind of a user research work product managers are doing or are open to do. Because previously Lori was helping us a lot with scheduling the research studies, doing all of the administration and management of them, which is like creating the epics and then, writing down the notes, creating analysis and then following up on that. So right now I know Lori will be supporting us, but will be providing so much hands-on help. Because of the busyness and workload. And I just wanted to see, Tao, if you have any plans like to be talking to customers, to be involved in any user interviews in any ways.
That's a good question.
So Tao, this changed. You went on vacation. You say you don't go on vacation.
I'm just trying to absorb this.
Yes.
What just happened here? Go ahead,
So
Lori.
what's happened is I am yet one person, but I've got 10, 12 people who I've been doing research for. I can't keep it up. So what we are going to do, according to Jason and Christy, is shift the responsibility of conducting the research to more on designers and product managers until we can hire more researchers. We're waiting to get approval, but it will not happen until February because that's new fiscal year, right? So that being said, I'm not leaving anybody out to dry. I'm not saying, okay, have fun, I'm going away now. I am working very closely with anybody who needs my help to do the whole process. I sat in on one for James yesterday and took notes for him, as well as helping him with the discussion guide and taking him through the whole process. So I will not be doing the research by myself any longer. I'm going to be helping people to do it until we can get some more researchers hired. That's the big change that happened when you left to go on your vacation. So that being said, I'm not requiring anybody to have a research project every milestone. If there's not anything that you see that needs answers, then there isn't anything. However, everybody so far has had at least one thing they need to get research for in the problem validation space. So I'm helping everybody one-on-one.
Okay, gotcha. This makes total sense to me, Lori, because we can't clone you. Totally.
I know, damn it. I could use some clones around here.
And it also helps with the expectation from my leadership that PMs are more involved in directly talking to customers, which I can check that box by being personally involved in research and interviews. So going back to the ask here for PMs. It's good to know that I need to figure out what I need and put it in this issue. But are we just identifying that it's a need specific for you to handle, Lori, in this issue, or just a general need that I would partner with my product designer to tackle with some oversight from you?
I will not be tackling any research myself.
Oh, okay.
Moving forward, because I simply can't. My level of interaction and support will vary depending on who it is and what they need.
Okay.
However, so it can be from just a check-in like I do with Ian to very specific writing questions and goals and objectives like I do with some of the product managers and taking notes and giving them feedback. This issue was started for me to try to corral to see like what do people need in 12.6, because they hadn't thought about it yet. It can be both research that you need solution validation for and problem validation. It's just a place to start that conversation to see who I need to help with what, for what, how long, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if we'll do another one of these for 12.7, but we'll see. Somehow I need to start corralling it so I know who I need to help.
Okay, right. This statement that I'm highlighting, research issue, I'm aware of that requires 100% commitment for me. That statement, 100% commitment, made me think that these are the ones that you're going to personally be doing. So that's where I got that.
Yes. So I haven't gone back and updated the initial text at the top. So that's how I started this, because I started this saying, okay, what do you need me to do? Then as the discussion continued, Jason weighed in. He had a side conversation with Christy. Then Jason came in and said, after I discussed with Christy, we've decided that we cannot make you do all of this. We need to shift the burden across the teams. Okay. So I haven't gone back up to the top and changed any of that.
No worries. I'm fresh eyes on this, and so
it was good.
Taking the description as current state of what we want to do. All right. So I need to read through this, and then I'll figure out what my needs are for 12.6, add it to this issue, but with the understanding that Dimitri and I are going to be working on it together with some help if needed from you, Lori, or at least some oversight from you.
Yeah, I think there's a perfect action item for our thinking big sessions. Figure out where what your needs are. Figure out where I think are potential areas of opportunity, and then align on that to be able to put them in here. But I was also going to point out that the description was still saying a different thing from what Lori is describing now. So I wanted to add as context that from a product designer's perspective, there is the expectation that at least 50% of my workload is dedicated towards, research or validation efforts. The others is still, on strategy and ideation. And I wonder how much the expectation on that is in terms of product management. And that is up for you to decide and discuss with, for example, Jason, et cetera. But I wanted to offer the context from a product designer's perspective.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
I will be dropping right now. I need to open up another session. But yeah, so this one was just FYI and the call, like, hey, we need to talk about that. I didn't expect any clear answers today, so no worries. And I understand, especially if you've been on vacation, Tao, it's probably a surprise. So yeah, let's come back to this discussion later as well. And I need to drop it now.
Yeah, and I'll get up to speed on this by the time we meet again. But we'll work async on as I identify things too, Dimitri.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We're at time. You can stop the recording, whoever started it, and then we